welcome to the Aboriginal channel. On this episode, I'm going to describe a situation that will help you be more wiser about the information you gather and definitely the information you regurgitate out into the community. A brother last night on the sister's channel, Sister Bethy, that's the name of her channel, he presented this book and was basically regurgitating things written in it. So I had to go back and look since it seemed odd to me, some of the things that he had said. So right here, the book is called The Incas, or The Destruction of the Empire of Peru. I found in the book right here, it says, in early times, this immense country was inhabited by various nations who were without laws, unused to discipline, and destitute of morals, wandering through forests, their prey and such fruits as an uncultivated foil threw forth, as it were, in pity to their wants, afforded them a casual subsistence. Their hunting consisted of war on each other, and the conquerors fed on the bodies of the vanished. So right here is basically saying that the Incas, or the people over here, the Indians, were cannibals. That's what it's saying in the book. Now, an example of how they lie about the Indians being cannibals, we'll go over here to the Wikipedia page about the father of Texas, which was Stephen F. Austin. Now, Stephen F. Austin was responsible for a lot of Aboriginal American death. So right here it says Austin laid claim to rich tracts of land near bays and river mouths populated by the Caracalla. The Caracalla relied on these bays for the fish and shellfish that provided their winter protein sources, and thus were fiercely protected of that land. Austin wrote upon scouting the land that extermination of the Caracalla would be necessary, despite the fact that his first encounter with the tribe was friendly. He spread rumors among the settlers of cannibalism and extreme violence of the Caracalla, sometimes more specifically the Caracaguas. Research has suggested that these accusations of cannibalism were false, possibly caused by confusion with another tribe, and that the Caracawa were horrified by cannibalism when they learned of it being practiced by shipwrecked Spaniards. So it wasn't the actual Indians that were cannibals. It seems like the shipwrecked Spaniards were. But it says Austin's stories primed the colonists to believe that the Caracawa would be impossible to live among, and may have contributed to the Skull Creek massacre, in which a Caracawa village was razed and the 19 Caracawa Indians were killed. You know, it was much more than that. They always give a low number. But we can also go over here and look at Hernan Cortez. It says Hernan Cortez, leader of the Spanish conquest of the Mexica in present-day Mexico, made many mentions of cannibalism in his letters back to Spain. Well, when you look his Wikipedia page up, and it talks about his letters, says there are relatively few sources to the early life of Cortez. His fame arose from his participation in the conquest of Mexico, and it was only after this that people became interested in reading and writing about him. Probably the best source is his letters to the king, which he wrote during the campaign of Mexico. But they are written with the specific purpose of putting his efforts in a favorable light, and so must be read critically. So basically, he was writing line about the Indians so that his support from the people in Spain would not stop. Up here it says that he's responsible for thousands of Indian deaths. But I'll get back over here to Stephen Austin. So down here says during these years, Austin, a member of Louisiana Lodge number 111, sought to establish Freemasonry in Texas. Freemasonry was well established among the educated classes of Mexican society. It had been introduced among the aristocracy local to the House of Bourbon. Okay. Now the writer of that book, which was the Incas, or the destruction of the Empire of Peru, where it says that they didn't cultivate the ground and they're hunting, they hunted each other and then ate the bodies of the dead. This guy, his name was Jean-Francois Marmontel, says he was a French historian and writer. Says he was a member of the Masonic Lodge Les Neuf Sources, which means the Nine Sisters. Okay. Now, the Nine Sisters, established in Paris in 1776, that was a year before the man put the book out, was a prominent French Masonic lodge of the Grand Orient de France that was influential in organizing French support for the American Revolution. And when you look at the American Revolutionary War, as I pulled up right here on Wikipedia, there's some interesting occurrences. It's saying that all these tribes fought with the American and the French and the Spain against the Great Britain and all these tribes. But if you know anything about the Iroquois Confederation, the 5 nations or the 6 nations, you know that the Onondaga, Mohawk, the Cayuga, Seneca, and then over here the Oneida and the Tuscarora are all part of the Iroquois Confederation. But here you got them fighting basically against each other, which is kind of odd. It don't really fit. But we know that George Washington was the head man basically of the Revolutionary War. It says right here that Freemasonry, George Washington became a member of the Order of the Freemasons in October of 1752, joining the Fredericksburg Lodge number 4 in Fredericksburg, Virginia. So he was a Freemason. Now, how do we connect the English Freemasonry with the French Freemasonry? Because the guy, Jean-Francois Marmontel, was a Frenchman and also a Freemason. In order to do that, we have to look at George III, who was involved in the American Revolutionary War as the head guy. Let me look back over here. Right here, King George III on the British side. It says right here that according to a tradition dating to 1777, which was the date that that book was put out, the first Masonic lodge in France was founded in 1688 by the Royal Irish Regiment, which followed James II of England into exile. So that's the connection between the Freemasons in France and the Freemasons in England, or the British Freemasons. There's a connection. And George III, it says he wasn't a Freemason himself, but his dad was, and about 6 of his sons also were. It says George III never became a Freemason himself. However, he did father 7 sons who lived into maturity, of whom 6 became Freemasons. So this man, father and sons are Freemasons. George Washington was a Freemason. I'm sure Benjamin Franklin was also a Freemason. Then when you go back and look at the 9 Sisters Lodge, which was established in 1776, you go down and look at some of his members. And the first member right here is Benjamin Franklin. Benjamin Franklin was a member of this lodge. You go back to the American Revolutionary War, you see that Benjamin Franklin is right here on the list. So I doubt that George Washington, a Freemasonry, Benjamin Franklin, a Freemason, who, once again, if you look at back at the 9 Sisters, it says in 1778, the year Voltaire became a member, Benjamin Franklin and John Paul Jones also were accepted, along with John Sylvian Bailey. Benjamin Franklin became master of the lodge in 1779 and was re-elected in 1780. When Franklin, after a long and influential stay in Europe, returned to America to participate in the writing of the Constitution. So, Benjamin Franklin was in Europe. However, it says right here that he was fighting in the American Revolution on the American side against those Britons, those Europeans that he was just over there in the lodge with. So it's confusing, but bottom line is you don't want to be putting out information until you got the full grasp of what it is. Through the history books, which has all been a lie. So therefore, if it's a lie, then what's the truth? If it's a lie, then what's the truth?